Click the links to join the channel here over at SubScribestar. So Nick Rekieta, kind of the Comicsgate, Fandom Menace, end of an era. This area of the internet started, I think, in about 2015, because on one end of the spectrum, you had Diversity in Comics talking about these woke comic books, and his Kia holding a cell phone, which made the comic people on social media lose their freaking minds, and that started the whole Comicsgate thing with Myers. But then you also had the YouTubers who were starting to laugh at the Star Wars came out in 2015, the Disney version of it, and it signified a shift over from Disney, where only a few years ago they were knocking it out of the park with the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then they had this Disney Star Wars. People looked at it and it was like, it was so bad that people were able to capitalize on it, where Mahler could do a breakdown of Star Wars, and it was a 6-hour breakdown that was way more entertaining than the actual movie itself, which doesn't bode well for Hollywood. But there's a ton of other channels that were coming out about 10 years ago. The Quartering covered the Magic the Gathering type of stuff, and all these other geeks and gamers and those kind of channels that were breaking down pop culture from a somewhat, I guess, of a right of center perspective, because all that the culture war became a left versus right thing. And people saw that there was a market for a right-wing kind of view to break down all this bullshit pop cultural cancer. And first of all, everyone is entitled to due process. People get arrested for stuff all the time. It doesn't mean they're guilty, and it doesn't mean the police reports are accurate. And I've seen Rekieta's show on and off. He got big doing the Vic Mignogna stuff, was one of the things. Johnny Depp trial was one of the things. Huge, actually, at one time. I think he had 100,000 people in a live stream covering the Johnny Depp case, defamation case, which was, I mean, it was so big, I think YouTube shut it down for some reason. YouTube doesn't like people who are off the plantation having any ability to control the narrative. I think is I haven't watched too much of it lately, or any YouTube lately, because I just don't care as much about pop culture anymore, because it feels like pop culture, Hollywood, it feels like it's dead. And thing is, Nick has always seemed like a really nice guy, level-headed, and ability to be impartial, analyze things from both sides, and he was willing to interview people who were on the outs with the people that he was also friends with, because he was trying to be impartial and present both sides of the spectrum, which I thought was very cool. And he's had a lot of different people on his show. But people put their whole lives into live streaming, and they form these parasocial relationships with their subscribers. And if you're not on a solid emotional and spiritual foundation, you can spiral into degeneracy. And if you get on social media and you start making stuff, you got to have a very thick skin. But then once you go into live streaming, where you're doing so much live streaming because there's so much money into it, you really don't want to go in there with a drug or alcohol issue. You really want to have that like years behind you and come out the other side. And the other thing is, like, yeah, the money is there for these live streamers, but you just don't have to live stream almost every night. There should be a break between you and the internet. And at some point, you're just gonna have to say, it's your health is ultimately worth much more than a few $1,000s you're gonna make on live stream, because the health is priceless. And the thing is, there's been for the past few years the usual rumors and gossip online about him and his wife being into all sorts of weird sexual stuff and clubs and that kind of thing. And I heard that and I just ignored it, because 99% of the stuff on the internet is a lie. But then I saw that recent 2-minute video clip of him drinking on stream, and I'll show that. And he looked like he was either dying of cancer or had an addiction issue. And I think this is maybe the short clip, but I think he's got a glass and drinking something in the stream, and just does not look in a good spiritual place. And first of all, I'm not dunking on him. If that's the issue, then stop using, go to daily meetings and have a spiritual awakening. You never have to drink or use again. living clean and sober is just easier, especially if you have kids. The fun times with powders and pills is not worth it. And I mean, one, you never need to do that at all. But if you do it at all, that's like a brief period in your 20s, and you should outgrow that very, very quickly. So what most of us are hoping for is that he starts the 12 steps, gets clean, gets sober, has got to come to Jesus moment and comes back strong and healthy. One of the bad things about being a public figure is this kind of stuff. Live streaming isn't Hollywood, where you go to hair and makeup before you do one of several takes, and it's all fake. Live streaming at the YouTube level, it's brutally live. You've got the camera on, and there's no delay. And if you have any kind of health issues, everyone can see it. It got to the point where even his own chat was telling him to stop drinking and powdering his nose, if that was what was going on. Of course, I don't know for sure. You can't hide an addiction, especially if the wife and apparently their girlfriend were all also using. But it doesn't have to destroy your family, as some of these Twitter responses seem to think, that the least little thing, suddenly it's like your life is over, your family's over. That's not how it works. You go to rehab, and then you go to meetings. And admittedly, his brand is partially built around drinking, but it's not the end of the world for him to end that chapter of his life before it ends him and focus on eating right, fitness, and getting his mental and spiritual health in order. Some of this stuff is easier for people who don't drink or got their experiences over with earlier. Like Gary from Nerdrotic is one. He's very open about that. And there's probably a few others. I don't know if everyone talks about it. So when the YouTube money starts to seriously pour in for these people who got these channels, it didn't cause someone like him to spiral because he had already had that experience. But if you take a small streamer who's got a normal job and maybe drinks and does a little powder every so often, but you take that kind of person and suddenly his small channel goes from, making $1,000 a month and just starts leaping up to, $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 a month of his extra income, where you're just on stream breaking down trials or just drinking, having a good time. That changes things because it gives you a ton of extra income to suddenly indulge your vices. It happens when people are sort of addicts waiting to happen if the circumstances are right. And a channel like this is never going to blow up, but even if the alt platforms, Odyssey and the BitChute took off, if I stopped drinking decades ago, so some of that stuff, it's just easier. That's the magic of hearing the words, you don't have to ever drink again. You can have a day where you take your last drink. So I hope Nick has had his last drink and gets 24 hours clean. And that's your first day, the day at a time. And then you get a string of a bunch of those days together, and you'll have a year. And then 10 years from now, he'll have 10 years clean and sober with a bunch of days at a time adding up to it. And he'll be helping other people with the 12 steps. The other issue is the legal one, is that Nick is the great white defendant. So the court is going to throw the book at him. At least they'll try, proportionally, because of the magic of per cap, which people on social media don't seem to understand. They don't get someone like him with these allegations against him as often as they do with other groups. So the DA will want to drop the hammer on him, which is going to be an issue because I assume he's got a clean record, so they just can't go too crazy on him. So what will happen, what could possible pathways are, he can go to rehab for 28 days, either full-time, which would be good if you could figure out some way to watch the kids, because I'm assuming the wife has to go also. Or you can do a day program, and then you go to meetings daily. And if he does his show, you just don't discuss these things pending litigation. So when the next phase of his case rolls around in a few months, he and his wife, because the court will give you time to do that kind of stuff, because they make the assumption that you're going to do that stuff. So a few months from now, he can have a few months under his belt of being clean and sober. He and his wife, they go to court. They look healthy. They're eating right and exercising, and he'll have several months if he continues to live stream of basically streaming his recovery, where you slowly start to see him get a little bit healthier, put on a little bit of a muscle, maybe get outside, do a little bit of gardening, eating right, exercising, throw out the bar, throw out all the liquor bottles, throw out all those vices, and get yourself some dumbbells and a weight bench, that kind of thing. And it's like, well, start exercising. You can put all that energy into lifting weights and doing whatever, but having that spiritual awakening is going to be key. And the court will take a look at him in a few months, and they'll see, oh, okay, he's had that come to Jesus moment. It looks like he and his family want to get his life back on track and go back to putting all this stuff behind them, having, gone through the other side of a bad thing. It's like, it doesn't have to be the end of it has to be the end of this phase of your life, but it doesn't have to destroy your family. It doesn't have to destroy your relationship. Tons of people go through this. It's just, for the rest of us, we have the privilege of doing it privately, because, if you're not live streaming, it's like a ton of people go through this at all ages of their life, and with family or without family, where they go to rehab, they do the 28 days, they come out the other side, and they're just fine, and they've learned from it. It's, it sucks when you're live streaming every other night and people are watching you spiral into something, but then they can watch you come out of it also, and hopefully you can inspire other people and help them out. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Prayers for Nick, Rekieta, and family, and I'll see you guys all next episode.